Hello everyone. You can probably recognize this as our shallow South American Rio Negro blackwater biotop, which I talked about in a number of videos on my channel earlier on. The last video I made about this tank is that everything was fine and the setup was finally functioning, and I was quite happy with the fish, with the plants, and with the scape. Well, this is how it looks now. So basically what happened is that we had a bit of a leaking situation in that area in here, and in a way that was something I have potentially expected because of how sloppy the silicone work is on this tank. I mean, it's a custom made tank, and unfortunately it was not made very well. You can see that the silicone seam is very uneven, and it feels like it's been done by a complete amateur. I think I would have done a better job myself. Yeah, you can see how it's siliconed in here. So yeah, in a way I have expected that there might be potentially problems with this tank, and there was a problem. It wasn't a major leak, so we didn't flood anything or anyone. We're actually living on the ground floor, so we couldn't have flooded anyone, any of our neighbors in any case. But nevertheless, to address this problem, to deal with the situation, I had to empty the tank, I had to break down the scape, had to remove the fish elsewhere, and try to fix this. So I've added a bit of silicone along this entire line here, and I will kind of tidy it up later on once the silicone fully cures. It's been just like a couple of days, and I will try to tidy up all this silicone work in here and elsewhere, and I will add a bit of silicone where it is needed, but I will also remove tons of this old silicone popping up everywhere in here, which was the original making of this tank. The other thing that I've done, kind of using this opportunity because the tank is empty, is I removed those dreadful braces which were on all four sides of the tank. But the thing about those braces were that they didn't really connect to each other. So there were two braces on the sides and two braces on this side, and I really didn't like them, so I removed them completely, and now it's a rimless tank, so it has no braces. And obviously my plan is to use it as an open top tank, which I couldn't really do before. And the other problem for me to use it as an open top tank before was that it was quite difficult to heat this tank when it was without a lid. But I will be using it probably as unheated room temperature setup with lots of riparian plants. It's not going to be on the same stand. I'm thinking about replacing the stand, because in order to create kind of a live wall of riparian plants, a background, a 3D background which will support all of these plants, I would need a lower stand, and this is a fairly high or fairly tall stand, so I will need to find another stand. And also I don't particularly like this stand. I know it looks okay on camera, but in real life it looks a bit chubby, and it doesn't look very accurate and very good looking for a display tank. So yeah, these are the few things that I want to do while this tank is empty. And yes, it was very unfortunate for me to break down the scape, because I was very happy with the scape and was happy with how the plants were growing and how the fish were developing in this tank. But it just had to be done, because this leak, although it wasn't a very major leak, it could have developed into something more serious, which would have affected the fish, obviously. So I had no other choice but to empty this tank, and using this opportunity to make some other cosmetic changes on this tank. Nevertheless, I really like the size of this tank, the shape of this tank. It's a 160 centimeter tank, almost 6 foot long, and it's 35 centimeter high and 60 centimeters wide. Perfect shape for riparian aquascapes, and perfect shape for bottom dwellers such as Corydoras and Plecos and lots of other fish, which is what I'm going to use it for. You are probably wondering where are the fish from that scape, and I had to distribute them among all the tanks that I have in my fish room. It is a bit crowded at the moment, and some of the tanks, well, basically only one of of the tanks in the fish room, I would say, is overstocked, but that's temporary. That's while I'm working on this main display tank, and they just have to live in this slightly overcrowded conditions. So in here, I'm sorry about the reflections, there's no light on this tank and there's not much I can do about it. Previously we had a group of Hype Ancestors L33 King Tiger Plecos here, and they're still here, and actually we had the first spawn recently. There were some wrigglers coming out from this cave, and they are somewhere hiding and hopefully feeling good. So I've added here our group of Corydoras Schwarzei and Corydoras CW28. They're very similar species. And they like, these are generally Corydoras from Rio Negro basin, and they like warmer temperature, and this is what I have in here. So that's a tank that's heated up quite a lot. The temperature stays at 28 degrees Celsius, which is what Hype Ancestors like. This tank is definitely not overstocked. There's less than 20 fish in here, and that's a relatively decently sized tank. In here, originally there was just a pair of Ancestors 393 Plecos in here and no other fish, so I've added here our colony of pencil fish. It's mostly made up of wild caught Nanostomus beckfordi, but there's also two Nanostomus marginatus dwarf pencil fish, which are F2 or F3 born in one of my tanks. So this tank is also quite sparsely populated, I would say, because the pencils are quite small fish, and they actually act as a very good deserve fish to Plecos, because I've never seen Plecos actually coming out of their hides in here, but now they are slightly more active. So I'll probably keep the pencil fish group in here. So to this tank down here I've added our glow light tetras, Hemigrammus erythrazonus, and a group of Corydoras arcuatus. Originally there was just a pair of Ancestors 309 green spot Plecos. So now, yeah, the Corydoras are mostly hiding in the back, and glow light tetras are also hiding in the back, so this tank looks still quite empty. You can hardly see any fish in here. You can see Corydoras in the reflection. But yeah, I was hoping that adding this new fish will be sort of a deezer fish situation for Plecos, and they will become more outgoing, but that wasn't the case. So this is a most overstocked tank, unfortunately, because it currently hosts all our cardinal tetras, about 70 of them, 70, and 5 checkerboard cichlids. Well, I do quite a lot of water changes on this tank. It has a really huge sponge filter, cycled sponge filter, and a lot of pothos plants and Brazilian pennywort plants, so they hopefully remove some of the nitrates. And yes, that tank is probably a bit overstocked, but only temporarily. And the last tank in here, which is used to be unheated South American biotop tank, but I've added a heater here because I've added here some Pristella tetras and Corydoras duplicareus. Well, Corydoras duplicareus actually enjoy cooler temperatures, so they're fine with cooler temperatures, but because Pristella tetras are slightly more sensitive to colder water, I've added a heater, but it's still not a particularly hot setup, so I keep it at about 23 degrees Celsius, which is great. And previously it only had this beautiful wild caught Corydoras aeneus, wild bronze coris, some Apheocharox rasponi, this is one of them, and rubber nose Plecos. So this was a sparsely populated tank before. Now it has more fish, but they seem to be doing great in here actually, because We've had a few spawns of Corydoras duplicareus. There are actually eggs somewhere here. Yeah, if you can see them, you can see them on the glass. Some eggs of Corydoras duplicareus, and there are some juveniles of Corydoras duplicareus somewhere in here. But yeah, so the fish seem to be doing well. Probably the only tank that I'm slightly concerned about is this tank here with lots of cardinal tetras, because it looks a bit overpopulated, but only temporarily, because I will be getting one of these cubes very soon, and I will set up a blackwater biotop for cardinal tetras in this kind of cube in a different room. So that will somewhat alleviate this overcrowding situation. Well, other than that, it's certainly not a very enjoyable situation to have this leak on this system, which was a bit unexpected, and to be honest, a bit disappointing, because I was hoping that this setup will exist in its current state for quite some time, at least for a year or two. I was not planning to break it down, but that just had to be done, and I guess I'll take it as a blessing in disguise, an opportunity to remove the braces and to make this tank more appealing, to change the stand, and to set up a new scape. Actually, I will also be removing this tank from this particular corner. As you can see, this is actually a corner of our living room. Excuse all the bathroom wall panels, because we're doing some home renovations at the same time. This location in here, it doesn't get any actual sunlight, and it gets very little of daylight. It's actually, that's where the windows are, and as a result, there was no light for riparian plants to grow, and they didn't quite thrive in this setup. So the idea is actually to move this TV in that corner over here, and to put this tank in here, which will provide it with some sunlight, and or at least some daylight from the windows, and will have a better environment for riparian plants to grow. So that's a plan for recent future. So before I move this tank, I need to find another stand for it, and I need to make sure that it doesn't leak, that all the seams, all the corners are well siliconed, and the silicone is accurately removed. Well, what I mean by that is that I need to kind of trim the edges to make sure that there's no popping up pieces of silicone beads like in here, and obviously I also need to clean up all the silicone from braces which I've removed, and so there's a bit of this cleaning and tidying up work, and testing this tank for leaks. I will fill it up with water, and I will let it stay like this for at least 2 weeks, to make sure that nothing is leaking, and before I'll start rescaping it again, I need to be 100% sure that there will be no more disasters happening with this tank. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this somewhat not enjoyable update, but as I'm saying, this is probably for better in the long term, because it will provide me with opportunities to create a better scape in this tank, and to move it to another location where I can plant some riparian plants, and I can create some beautiful aquascape in here, and to use this tank to its full potential. Alright, so stay tuned, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, and there will be more updates about this tank coming soon. So I'll see you soon.